But okay. So Kirk, the first I wanted to ask, how did you feel like the lesson went? What did you do well? What did you like about it?
What did I do well? I guess I like I like to use guided instruction a lot. I find that's very helpful. Um, I usually never tell my students the answer,
Mm-hmm.
leave it out there in the open. So I do like how I introduced. Uh, I guess I call it an entry level ticket. I don't know if it is, but I did a matching activity with predator and prey, where and then they had to locate the word predator in the content that we studied previous day. Then I wanted them to use a new vocabulary item, prey, and I assigned that as homework as opposed to just give them that. And so that's what I like. I do like my reward system that I give them actually fake currency. Uh, that's something I just thought of one day. Fake dollars. My girlfriend said it was a great idea that the students will actually learn to be responsible. They learn to use their money, keep it safe. If someone steals it, they have to be responsible. So I do like that. Um, uh, and as always, and I guess all of my teaching, I like my use of humor. Uh, I think uh, I think I like to make someone laugh. I like to see them smile, and I hope they make some like class. So that
Okay. So we talked about the girls the last time. Are they in like a remedial English class? That's what they're doing here? Like they're just I couldn't
you
remember.
you could call it that. Um, they are at the lowest level. My school is split up the classes into um, three sections, if you want, low, medium, and high. They're in the low class.
Oh, okay, I see.
Um, so I think I don't know. I think they're actually fairly smart and get grasp it pretty easy, but I do think my school kind of babies them a bit.
Mhm.
Um, I think they can join the other medium class, no problem. But I'm just a teacher here, so I have little say. I can give them my advice, but it's up to them to do it.
Okay. That's why I was just curious as I was watching the lesson. I wanted to like be a little, clear. All right. And then what are areas of growth that you can think about? Like, what are areas that you either thought in the lesson you'd want to change, or areas that you feel like as a teacher you want to grow in as a whole?
Mhm. Okay. I thought about this, and I was doing it today actually. Um, two big things, two uh, glaring weaknesses or areas of improvement for me uh, are is to be better prepared at the start, have it go fast. If I lost, I don't know, 5 minutes, I'm just bustling around with the computer, asking questions orally. Sometimes if students, they have bad listening skills or whatever, but so right off there, right off the bat, that I could have went in hard, out swinging, kind of. We went fast. And the other big thing that I'm learning with Moreland a lot, um, there actually is a huge cognitive difference between Anne, the strong student in the middle, and Rita and Emily. Anne just gets it. She's on top of the ball. She answers all the questions. I try to not do that. But so on top of that, um, there's two ways Moreland's taught me to handle this. You can give Anne extra handouts, give her another activity where I can push her even harder. where, because everyone learns at a different, the learning curve is different per student. And the second way Moreland's taught me is I can give them roles where I could actually give, and she could be treasurer, or she could handle the money and hand out the money to the students or something like that. Give her some sort of, some task like this where something like that is, so do them in different roles. And I have that sort of freedom at the school. So those two things.
Those are actually two things that I would have identified from watching your first teaching video as well.
Okay.
So I'm going to pull up my. I really also enjoyed your reward system. I was actually really curious. At first, I was like, what is he handing out? I think that you have a really good system. Anyway, I was curious about how your reward systems works, because you could tell the kids were excited about it and engaged in it. But I was just curious how it's going to work. So, and then, sorry, I'm just just reading through my notes really quick.
All right.
I enjoyed seeing like the different languages for cat. Like I thought that was a really interesting activity. And one that was kind of fun. And then also that you kind of set the stage for the next class. So you're building that knowledge for the next class. I thought that was a really great idea. Which you talked about that's what they had done before. So when you started your lesson that they had that. So that's obviously a teaching practice that you have in place. I really enjoyed that. So then the areas that like, specifically as it relates to standard one talks about the student's growth and development, and are you designing appropriate and challenging learning experiences? So that's kind of what we've talked about just for a minute. And then are you using strategies to meet their cognitive, linguistic, social, emotional, and physical needs? So that's kind of what standard one is specifically addressing.
Okay.
And so those were kind of some of the things that I was looking for. So you mentioned like at the beginning of your class that while you're getting everything set up, that sometimes it's not as prepared. So then you're kind of trying to ask questions. Is that how this lesson went as well? While you're trying to get it set up? Yeah. So I would encourage you to think about maybe a task that they can be doing. So you mentioned that they had already done their homework, right? And they were learning about pray. So yes. Even while you're setting up, because that's going to happen in a classroom, that you have to make sure that you're ready for the next lesson. But even while you're setting up, perhaps have them writing a sentence about pray, or talking to each other about what they learned about pray. Some kind of interactive activity with each other that doesn't necessarily need you to monitor for a minute while you're trying to get set up. Does that make sense? So
that's really good advice.
Especially if it's one where they get to communicate with one another. Because then that hits on that where you were talking about different roles for the girls. And could be the leader at first until they get the hang of it, that they're going to do this communication activity every time they walk into class. That gives you time to set up the lesson while they're having an opportunity to communicate with one another.
Cool.
So that's an idea. Maybe I'll look up I can send you a potential idea that you can use for that one. After our meeting, but I thought that would be a good way to kind of help with that beginning, because it did seem like that your beginning of your lesson was kind of, I was like, I wonder how this is going to go. But then once it got going, it was much, much better. But that beginning lag, there was maybe 7 minutes or so. But that's 7 minutes of lost instruction time. So.
Right.
So that's one recommendation I would make, is just try to have, Fred Jones, he's a behavior management theorist, but he says to almost like having seat work or bell work, something for them to do as soon as they enter the class. Are the girls in your class all day, or do you have different groups?
That's just those 3 girls are specific for that class. It may change, but right now, that's all I have there.
Okay, so maybe even just that transition of the lesson. So just making sure that that transition in the lesson is there. So I think that would help a lot get that beginning, which is an area that you talked about, is being better prepared from the start. Then when you got into the questioning, you were talking about the krill. And then, so you noticed that they didn't know the word krill, which I thought was awesome. And obviously that's why they left that one for the end. And then,
right.
But then you said, oh no, that was a little bit. So then you went through and you explained what it was and they talked about it. It'd be interesting too, if you anticipated that, or even if you didn't, if you then extended that learning, like, ooh, tomorrow I'll bring you a picture of a krill, or something. Like after you guys started questioning it, it seemed like they understood, but krill is a difficult word, so they may still not have got it. So it'd be interesting to bring in, like, even if it's not for that day, the next day, say, hey, I'll bring in a picture of a krill, or maybe I'll find a little video that shows you what they look like or something, so that they start making that connection to that word, because it's a word they don't know.
Right.
Or one that they're going to use very frequently. So if you provided that extra teaching strategy, that extra teaching for them there, then it's a word that they at least can understand, you know. So that's just an extra tip there. I really liked when you were having them substitute the words in their sentences. They had wrote the sentence and then you went through to try and clarify the sentence and substitute the words in the sentence. I thought that was a great idea, so that that they understood, hey, this is what you're thinking, but here's a way to make it better. So that was really good modeling on that part.
Thank you.
And then, so that's something that I would recommend. Overall, though, because you're going to actually be evaluated on standard 1 2 times. So this video and then your next video. I would encourage you to think about ways of maybe more. You do great at your questioning strategies, but more of an engagement somehow, like some kind of I'm trying to think of what's the really good way to word it, but some type of like excitement and engagement with the material. Maybe they have to do, so you guys went through the questions, you did the part where they did the questions and then you're answering the questions, that kind of thing, but some kind of like activity with it. So a little bit more than just let's read and respond to the questions, but some kind of engagement with it. If you do that at the beginning while you're setting up, I think that would hit on that need of the standard. But to bring in that engagement with the learning is an area that you'll want to work on there. Does that make sense?
Sure. I just have to think of a better way to do it. And I try not to print at my school because I have to pay for paper.
Mm-hmm.
So I need to think of another way to do it.
Well, I think my personal opinion is that a lot of the activities that you can do for students don't require printing. They don't require, I mean, engagement, in my opinion, just in my experience, engagement in a classroom comes from the learning experience and not necessarily from either worksheets or activities like that. Does that make sense? So they really
Sure.
grow as they communicate with each other, as they play, for lack of a better word, as they play with the material when they interact with it, which usually is not in the form of something, a worksheet of some sort or something. Does that make sense?
Okay.
So I'll look and send you a couple follow-up ideas on that as well. Okay.
Thank you.
Yep. And then the last thing that I wanted to just kind of extend your understanding about was when you were talking about your differentiation, because I did also notice that you have Anne, who's far beyond the other two, or at least just more willing to communicate in your class.
Right.
Is, as opposed to just either giving her more work or roles, another way you can do that is find a paired text. So for example, you set the stage that you wanted the kids to read about or prepare the pray or something for the next lesson, right?
Okay.
And then you're going to have your Spectrum grade 5 paper that you guys are reading, your article that you're reading, and then the guided questions. Now, another way to then extend the learning would be, okay, now we're going to have this more advanced, we're going to have a little bit of a harder text, and every time maybe you have Anne read that aloud and you have the other two girls start to just engage in what are they getting from that. You could still keep it in the group like that, as opposed to just planning extra, because the goal would be to get these girls up to level with their peers anyway.
Right.
And so that's a way to kind of bridge that gap and challenge Anne at the same time. Now, I know that you're using Spectrum, but readworks.com has a lot of texts that then you could choose the level. That would probably go really nicely. So if you're studying predators and prey, then on ReadWorks, find whatever grade level you want and then type in predators and prey. And I'm sure you're going to find something because they have a lot of resources on there. I wouldn't say that they're the most academically based, but they supplement reading really well. Like that website supplements reading really, really well. It just gives you access to a lot of reading material.
RE works.
READ, read.
Oh, I gotcha.
ReadWorks.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm here. I'm saving it. Thank you.
So that's just another way that, and so ReadWorks itself has a idea, but when you're pairing text together, you can give them a text that's appropriate for them, which you would be using Spectrum, but then you can also do an extended text that might be a little more difficult for them, but then because you're guiding it would provide them with that opportunity to grow there.
I got it.
So so that's just another way to kind of enhance your lesson a little bit, and help kind of meet on the needs of Anne while you're also remediating the others and stuff. So that would just be an idea for differentiation for this particular format, since this is the format that you say you kind of have set up in your classroom anyway.